Welcome to My Creative Corner 3, a podcast about quilting, crafting, creativity, with a dash of garden, chatting about current interests and life in my northern town. You can find show notes at mycreativecorner3.com. You can also find all of my social media, how to purchase a virtual cup of coffee, and all events on the website. Please feel free to stop by and leave a comment. I really appreciate everyone who listens. Thanks for stopping by. Welcome to the podcast. Good morning. It's Sunday, July 28th, 2024, and I have a podcast today packed full of all kinds of things. We're going to talk about new things, maybe Amazon Prime Day haul, new things like the Olympics, what I've been up to in my life, as well as tried and true things that I love to talk about in the podcast, including creative process, quilting, crocheting, and some new craft products that I have purchased. So let's jump right into what's been going on in my life. It has been July. It's been off and on hot, or it's been rainy and cold. And this year, July has brought a lot of growth in my garden. It's lush, it's full, it's kind of doing its thing. And maybe toward the next week or so, I'll do a little cleanup and cleaning, weeding and trimming, things like that. I let the garden kind of do its thing and I don't do too much. It's a flower garden and I have a little mini area with tiny plants for the fairy garden, which didn't get fully set up this year, but I got one or two items in it and I hope to keep adding to that collection. So what else have I been doing, though, in my life is having what I call a bug war, all-out war, because bugs have been prolific. It started a couple weeks ago when my husband and I went to our 40th, oh my gosh, I said it out loud, our 40th high school reunion. It was a little bonfire at someone's house. We've had our last several reunions there. It's very informal, kind of a buffet in their garage. People bring their own drinks if you want to have any. And there's tables and chairs and a little campfire at a very nice property on a lake. So only about, I want to say 20-ish people from the class came, plus their partners or dates. And it was very nice to get together, chat. I've seen a lot of people over the last few years that came. These are people who normally live in Michigan and come. So it's hard to travel for these kind of things. But it was a lot of fun. And it also, brought people maybe who were further living away, maybe who couldn't come, to chat on the Facebook event page and things like that. So anyway, 1984, can you believe it? So I get home. Why am I talking about the class reunions? But it was outside. And I declined putting on bug spray. And my ankles, on a very hot day, I wore my Birkenstock shoes with no socks, and I got bit up. Let me tell you, friends, bit up by chiggers on my ankles. I am a chigger magnet, evidently, and it took 2 weeks of applying all kinds of hydrocortisone cream and things like that to get them to stop itching, but they did resolve in 10 days. It was only my ankles, just so you know, because I went really off the deep end, because then I saw some black bugs in my house. Now, they were downstairs in the living room, kitchen, and bathroom. They were not upstairs in my bedroom, but I looked at them and I thought, bites on my ankles. Do I have the dreaded bed bugs? Because in our area and in my client population, it is not unheard of. And no, they are not bed bugs. I tore the house apart. I checked every surface, cracks, where they were coming in, what the behavior of these bugs are. I went off on a anti-bug war. They're not upstairs where the sleeping quarters are. They're downstairs. And the bug that I got, finally, a very up close, detailed picture with my beautiful new phone, which is a Google Pixel 8 Pro for big screens for old people who can't see. It identified it not as a beetle that I thought it was, because it has a super duper hard shell and they walk around like beetles, but based on the number of legs that it has and the antenna and its apple seed shape, it is you all probably know what it is because you may have them, weevil. A rice weevil, or a type of weevil. I've never had it like this in my house, but the weather's changing. Remember me telling you we didn't get that much cold and snow last year, and the weather has been changing a lot over the last few years, which leads to more bugs. I've had more bugs in my Michigan basement, and if you don't know what a Michigan basement is, we call them that because they were hand dug basements lined with rocks. Mine was skim coated with cement and has a concrete floor, but it still is a rock basement with a 100-year-old house built on top of it. And bugs come in the basement, and there's a little crawl space part by the bathroom and kitchen. So I figured out where they're coming in by windows and duct work in the house. And they only come out at certain times of day. They don't bite. I have not been able to keep up on eliminating them. So I called a pest control person. I've never had to have my house sprayed for bugs before. I know when I lived in West Texas, we had an infestation of cockroaches. And when I moved, all of my stuff went into storage over winter, and it was a 40 below winter, and it killed off all of the bugs that were in our possessions. But it hasn't been 40 below in a long, long time. And I mean, literally, it was 40 below most of that winter. So that's the only reason why the bugs, cockroaches, didn't travel to my new home in Michigan. So I called them, and because I'm afraid with my long COVID to have the inside of the house sprayed, we had the exterior of the house and garage sprayed. And I felt really bad about that with the environmental things that I'm trying to do. But at the same time, I can't have these animals on me. I mean, they were in my sewing machine. They were on my furniture, crawling on my computers, in the bathroom. Just bugs. I'm sorry if I'm triggering you if you have a bug phobia, but that's been my last 3-week obsession is bugs. And I finally believe here we are the day after the house being sprayed. Because I did not have him come inside the house, he said we'll probably still have a few, but it should help and last 90 days. I paid a very premium dollar compared to what other people pay in different areas, but where you live you may have to pay more, but it was worth my mental health of not having these weevils. So I had to succumb to getting professional help. I should have done it sooner, to be honest. Like I say about everything, when you need professional help, get it. Whether it's for a physical job, a side job, your health, mental health, physical health, don't wait. So anyway, hopefully that took care of the problem. I can work out in our little gym without having little creatures visiting me, and hopefully I can cook in the kitchen without them helping me. So that has been my big thing, is I didn't want to go outside because I had the doctor look at my ankles when I went in for a routine appointment, and he goes, animals who bite, bugs who bite, just like certain people, and you're chosen one that they like to bite, evidently. And I just laughed because mosquitoes do that too. If I'm going to get bit up, my husband may not get bit up. We'll be at the same party. He didn't get bit up. I did, but I didn't wear socks, and I thought the full shoe was enough. No. wasn't enough. So anyway, the bugs hopefully are done. So the next thing I want to talk about, I love the Olympics. Oh, I love them so much. You know, I've done Olympic crafts before during the 2 weeks, and this year I got a head start, but I saw Lori Holt has been doing granny circles, or she calls them squircles. You can find that on her tutorial on her YouTube channel, Crochet Playlist. And I am going to use the Olympic time, and I've been really pretty much crocheting since I got her what she calls chunky thread, which is her cotton yarn that you can knit and crochet with. It is not a thread, but it is a thinner, nice yarn. I really like it, and I bought it from Fat Quarter Shop. And I'm also going to look for it on the road because I found Missouri Star Quilt Company also sells it. Now, does that give you a hint on where I might be going in the fall on our vacation? Yes, Missouri Star Quilt Company. So I spent time learning the granny circle. I know how, I'm not an advanced crochet person by any means, but I do know how to do granny squares, and I have done amigurumi in the past. So I know a little bit about crochet, and I did do when I was rehabilitating and recovering from having thyroid surgery and treatment. I did crochet a blanket of a sampler, and it's really pretty. But because I did it at a time when I was really quite sick and sad and scared because it was thyroid cancer at the time, I haven't got that out and haven't developed fond memories for it yet. But I just saw it the other day, and I think I might try to block that. It's really pretty and get it out. Anyway, that's a sidebar story. So crochet and I are something that we have been friends with for off and on for most of my adult life. And I am going to do an Olympic crochet and crochet as many of these granny circles as I can with the chunky thread. So I've got 15 or 18 of the little squares made already. But I'd started before the Olympics. We'll see how many more I can do over the next 2 weeks. It's fun to do this kind of a project in the evening. And then when the thread runs out, what am I going to do with them? Well, I bought a pillow because this is one of Lori's suggestions in her tutorials. I found a really nice pillow at Target, one of those rectangular ones, and it's not huge. So I may have way too many of these, but if I have enough, I'll buy another one of these pillows when I was out and about at Target, or order one online because you're going to hear me wail. We don't have a Target where I live. And you can recover pillows with the granny squares. And she has a great tutorial on how to do it. And I love that idea a lot. And I love the colors. Lori's colors are my jam. They really are. And she makes them all work together. And that's how I am a huge fan of her quilts and her books, and really, really loving it. So, yeah, I'm a Lori Holt fangirl. And so I took a picture, and I'm going to give you a hint. One item I got in my Amazon Prime haul was a very inexpensive $15 yarn winder. And I decided I wanted to wind the fabric, even though it was coming off the ball okay as it did straight from Fat Quarter Shop. I wanted to wind them into cakes. My daughter and I, remember last time I talked, we just started learning crochet patterns. She was learning crochet from ground zero, and she lives in Virginia Beach, and we were doing back and forth video calls and things like that for me to kind of encourage her as she was following a YouTube video on what she may or may not be doing to make her granny square look like a square. Well, she bought this particular yarn winder and said, "Mom, it's great." She goes, "Why haven't I bought one sooner?" She goes, "You should buy this because we waste so much time when the yarn gets tangled, and then you either make a massive knot and you cut and waste that yarn." Well, I bought it and it has made, wow, what a difference. So I clamped it to the table. I wound all of her beautiful, beautiful yarn balls into cakes. Let there be cake. And I stacked them up and the sun was coming through. I took a picture. I posted it on Instagram. And who liked that but Lori Holt herself? Fangirl moment. And then, of course, Fat Quarter Shop shared it because I said I bought it there in a couple of posts. So anyway, I had my exciting fangirl moment. I may never meet Lori Holt, but thank you, Lori, for giving me hearts on my picture. So the Olympics, I will say I loved the opening ceremony. At first, I was skeptical of having it outside, and I know it was in the pouring rain, which did hamper some of the performers a little bit because it was raining. But really, I just thought, I just love art so much, and it has rekindled the Olympic spirit in me about why I've been in a bit of an art slump. Remember a few weeks ago or a month or two ago, I talked about that on the podcast, and it made me realize why I find the Olympics so inspiring. I mean, part of it is overcoming adversity. That's like a huge thing in sports, right? The teamwork, that I love that. Part of my musician background is playing in bands and orchestra. The sum of many is the brilliance of that sum of many, which really is so much more than just the individuals who play instruments on their own or sing. But when you put everything together, it's just like, it's a magic moment, really. And I think sport is like that with teams. When they're clicking and the team is clicking, like the Super Bowl or winning the Stanley Cup in hockey, it's the sum of all the parts coming together in the brilliance of teamwork to win. And skill level. I mean, people who have honed their skill to beyond what we thought was even humanly possible happens every 4 years in the Olympics. So I think that's what I find inspiring. But I also like the opening ceremony reminded me of why I need to make art, whether it's quilting or crafty things, or it is painting or doodling or all of the things that I talk about in the creative process. Art is one of those things that allows us expression without words. Art is to connect to people with basically our souls on a human level beyond logic and explanation. Like certain paintings in the Louvre, when I saw that shot, I'm like, oh, one day I would love to see some of the paintings by the masters in person. I get lucky every once in a while and I get to see one or two at special exhibits, but wouldn't that be beautiful? One of my bucket list trips is to go to the Louvre. I would love to go to the British Museum in London and look at the art there, as well as some of the great archaeology. And watching the opening ceremony made me remember all of the time that I was like skeptical with my husband of watching these shows about history and art history and world history, because I didn't learn a lot about that in school. I really did not. it made me realize that this lifelong learning helped me to understand the French history and some of the references, to the French Revolution and Marie Antoinette and that kind of stuff. If I hadn't had that, I would have probably been sitting there going, I don't get it, because I 25, 30 years ago wouldn't have understood it. As a young person who only saw a few works of art in books in her life, my parents took us to all kinds of museums, let me tell you. But I didn't understand a lot about art as a kid because I didn't learn about the artists. I didn't learn about the period of time. But we went to art museums all the time as a kid when we were on vacation, a time or two a year, or on special trips. We did lots of historical things, and we still do that now. As adults, we took our kids on vacation to all kinds of places of history and talked about history and art, but I wasn't a student of it, I guess, until midlife, when you have time to pursue those rabbit holes that you want to learn. And sometimes I see something and then I come back home and research it down a rabbit hole for months to figure out all about the artist, like Leonardo da Vinci. I've watched many documentaries about him because I was like, who was he? Why did he make what he did? Why was it so diverse? All kinds of inventions. Tell me more. And that reminded me of why it's important. You have to keep remembering your why. Why do you do things? Why do you love things? And that's why I podcast about the creative process. Now, yes, it's about quilting and crafting, but really, I think it's the reason why, and so much more. So I am going to do an Olympic crochet with circles to represent my brain, the Olympic rings, and to ponder these thoughts about art and creativity. And thanks, opening ceremonies, for making me really think about that since I watched it Friday and feel this inspiration and rekindling of creativity and the creative process. Okay, what have I been doing in my quilting? I decided in July that I wanted to sew a scrap buster quilt, stash buster, if you will. These are not quilts for small pieces. It's by Sew Yeah Quilting, and they had a tutorial and they have a free pattern online. And I made two so far. One was a random palette of colors. No, it wasn't random. It was controlled scrappy without planning the color process. I just tried to get where you didn't have too many of the same fabrics hitting each other. And it's really built on very large pieces in a log cabin style. Super simple. It takes 60 6.5 by 12.5 inch strips for the family size potato chip quilt, which makes a lap size quilt. Then I kind of looked through other quilters' color placement, and if you want really good ideas about this, Brenda at Conquering Mount Scrapmore, she made a really great series about the potato chip quilt in a small block fashion, and people on her Facebook group have done, oh my goodness, so many beautiful quilts. And if you want to bust small scraps, this is a great one. And they have many ideas on layouts and color placement if you want to get that controlled. And it's a great place. I even saw a disappearing potato chip quilt, and it makes an interesting zigzag type thing. So the bottom line is I decided I had a ton of black, white, and a little bit of pink. And I just finished long arming my mom's quilt that was black and white with big punches of Pepto pink. I loved it. And so I made a potato chip quilt. But this time I planned the color placement where it was the center Oh my goodness. Now I got to look. What color was the center? I've moved my pattern with the color placement guide. Okay, I had more black than white, and I really liked how this particular layout went. I started with 2 separate black prints. Then I did the row around it in the hot pinks. And then the next row around is black. And then the row around used all of the white that I had, white prints, or white and black prints that read more white. And then the final 2 rows were blacks. And I used up all of the colors in the 60 perfectly in that particular placement. And I thought this is a great way to use up a stash of 3 colors that you could do in this particular layout is great. It's more organized and not as chaotic as the controlled palette one. But the controlled palette one was fun because it's chaos when you look at it. And I'm like, most people like in your eye, is more pleased with this organized. And it looks kind of like a giant block, which I really, really loved. So I sewed 2 of those this month and dwindled this stash down. And I want to bust this stash. And what am I going to do with all these family-sized potato chip quilts if I make more? Because I have enough to make a blue and green one with maybe touches of yellow or another light color. I don't know. And it doesn't matter. I'm going to use these as practice for long arming and kind of do it as a palette cleanser in between long arm projects, because sometimes you need something simple that you can actually take a risk on and work on a different stitch. I'm getting back into long arming again, which is good. I feel like I'm back. I feel like my brain is finally healed up from the long COVID and the little bit of I guess the remission was over a little bit this winter, but I'm thinking it may have been from another medical problem because my labs came back this week. I digress. We'll talk about the labs in my medical later. And overall, the potato chip quilt family size makes a great gift size for, maybe a graduating senior or a birthday gift, grandkid gift, people who are what everyone terms as muggles, who don't understand the work that a custom ordered quilt it can be. Sometimes people like that want a quilt, but they don't understand it. Or you could use it as an outdoor camping or picnic quilt, but don't get any bugs on it. There you go. I'm still on the bugs. So remember, you can find that pattern on Sew Yeah. You can look up their website. They have a store, a big one in Las Vegas, and they use one of their pre-cut, which is Vegas strips. But hey, why do that if you can cut your own little chips and get rid of a stash? But I'm going to tell you what this reminded me about is while I enjoy a great scrap quilt, and I am in awe of Diane at Stash Bandit, and every true scrap quilt that I see at quilt shows or in antique shops from our quilting ancestors or people before us, I am not enjoying the process of using tiny amounts of scraps. It's so much work. It's mentally draining, and I find it not fun. So that's where I think we enjoy buying new fabric and working with a chosen fabric to do quilts. This bust in your stash, this is why years ago I didn't have a stash. I busted it once, and I inherited a lot of fabric when my quilting friend died. And it's just one of those things I've used up and my friends have all used up. and my family and loved ones have used up a lot of her stash. I've donated a lot of it. I've kept her wish. I kept my promise to her. And now I'm busting the stash, and I may wind up donating several of these quilts to people in need or local foundations who are looking for quilts. I know homeless shelters. I don't know. I will find a place. We'll find a place for these to go. And it just reminded me, it's truly being a scrap quilter means hoarding too many tiny scraps that I'm sick of doing. And I've decided that even though I'm supposed to, maybe been told by a voice in my head that I'm supposed to like scrap quilting, I don't. I've acknowledged it. I've said it out loud, and I've put it in the universe. And I don't like it, so I'm not going to do it. I also have worked on the July quilt along that Fat Quarter Shop is doing. Is a Christmas in July free pattern called Star of Wonder, and it's the perfect size for my door quilt series. And we are to the final clue next week, which is the outer border. It has made a lovely and unique large star, and it's kind of like a medallion style where you start in the center and build around, much like the potato chip quilt. And I am loving it. I'll put a picture on show notes, or you can go to my Instagram. I have Instagram pictures of it. I love it. So now my question to myself is, how do I want to do these final two borders? So I pieced the little pieces that were, littler blocks for this border. And I'm waiting for the final long strips color, which I think I'm going to go with white, to see what is next week's clue. And then make some final decisions about assembly. And then I will have a quilt that's about 48 inches square, perfect for my door at work. And I can put it up not just at Christmas time, because I did Lori Holt's pinks, reds, and aquas, but I could put it up any time of the year. So that about wraps up what I've been doing in July for quilting, except for sewing part. Long arming, I have been long arming my Great Granny Squared quilt that I did 2 summers ago when we did a massive Great Granny Squared quilt along. Lori released a pattern for free cross stitch. She did tutorials on granny squares crocheted. And remember, I failed and bought pearl cotton. That's why I bought her chunky thread this time. Pearl cotton's hard to crochet with and didn't make as nice a square, just so you know. I did it with the threads I bought, but I'm not super thrilled with them. And the last thing was they reprinted and promoted a little pattern booklet called the Great Granny Squared pattern, and I made that, and I used up stash, and this is where I've made so many of my stash quilts that I am dwindling it down. But now I need to long arm these things, and I've not been taking as many. I'm not taking new customers. I'm just doing a couple of friends' quilts once in a while, and my machine got repaired. It's working like a dream now, and the frame is even not acting up. So I'm quilting that before I put on one of my friends' quilts, and I'm like, woohoo, I'm making progress. So the other thing is I put a black binding on the Spooky and Sweet, and now I am hand stitching. I have 2 quilts to finish hand stitching, the Petite Four and the Spooky and Sweet. So now let's look at that banner or door quilt update. So I had an idea at the beginning of the year to do a door quilt, because Riley Blake released a block of a quilt of the month box that I really couldn't afford. And I thought, why do I want to do that? I love the idea, but The Riley Blake patterns were all, most of them applique, and I do not enjoy. I can do it, but I don't enjoy it. And just like I said earlier, admit to yourself, I don't enjoy applique, so I'm not going to do it. But I want to give you an update of the quilts that I've made this year that have loosely gone to plan about all of the potential. The beginning of the year, I had a potential theme for every month. Well, we digressed from that right off the bat. And I'm kind of going out of order, but I am doing quilts that could be used for each month's theme. And I have done a lot that I'm really proud of. So January and February, instead of doing one banner for each month, I decided to go with the Petite Four. It's a larger quilt, and it'll work at my office, whether it's on one wall or the door. And it took me January and February to do it and quilt it, and now it's bound and needs to be hand stitched. That one is a free layout, but Fat Quarter Shop used all of their foundation paper piecing pre-printed blocks that come in a pad. Love that product so much, so much. And I may repeat this quilt in 4-inch. I may do it again in the 4-inch pads because I do have those here at home. And then in March, I made a very small mini clover. It was a free pattern by Diane at Stash Bandit, and I really enjoyed doing that. It's all in greens and looks like little shamrocks with a heart, a green heart in the middle. April, I did English paper piecing. And in May, I did something else. April's English paper piecing, I pulled out a lot of flower, grandmother flower garden hexagonal flowers. There we go. That's what I'm trying to say. And I made more. And I have enough for a wall banner, but I haven't finished it. I have the flowers made, but I need to machine applique, by the way, those on blocks and make the blocks into a quilt door banner. I will do that. In May, we had the May is Mental Health Month event at work, and we had people made blocks with the tulip fabric markers, and I, for work, need to make a wall hanging out of those 12 or 13 blocks that were made. But what the other one I was working on is going to be a door banner that I found the low volume 9 patches, and I've been sashing those, and I have, those low volume quilt blocks were in my orphan bin, and it's not finished because I have to wait for Strawberry Lemonade to get reprinted, which is going to happen some point this fall, and then I will put that quilt top together. But I do need to finish a couple of framing them in bright colors. Okay, so then in June, I did Spooky and Sweet, which was a impromptu addition to my Halloween wall banner. I'm struggling with that word. Why? Door quilt. And I was going to do something like that in October, but hey, Spooky and Sweet Quilt Along came in July and June, excuse me. It was a free pattern by Fat Quarter Shop, so I jumped on that. Used all scraps, and it made an adorable quilt, and I just bound that in black. If you remember, I had to do a little internet poll, and black won, and I was leaning toward black. It looks great. And now August is coming around, and what am I going to do? Well, I purchased at the beginning of the year, Corey Yoder of Coriander Quilts had a Barnstar quilt that I really liked. And she was showing a trunk show, which I don't watch a lot of other YouTube channels and stuff because time. I just don't have a lot of time. And I happened to see that she was doing a trunk show, and I wanted to see what she was up to because I do enjoy Corey's quilts and her patterns. And she did a sale for $5 back then. And she had a Barnstar series where she did door quilts. and they are supposed to be reminiscent of barn stars. Okay, so I can't find the pattern, and I had to scrub the internet, search it, go through stuff, and I found it. It looks like a swoon-inspired block. It is a Barn Star PDF quilt pattern number 127 on Coriander Quilts Etsy shop. It is currently $6.50, but I bought it on a special for $5. And I'm printing it out from my phone on our new printer, and it's lovely. So I'm so glad we have that. Now, I'm doing that in August. Do I have the colors picked out? No. Corey did it in yellow and grays, and that's kind of, her signature color palette. But I'm not doing that. I have a lot of grays, but I don't have a lot of yellows. So that's my current plan. And that brings us up today on the door quilts. I have ideas for September, October, November, and December. And but they're loose plans because I may be inspired by something else coming along. But I do have some ideas to make things from the Scrappiness is Happiness book by Lori Holt, or some other patterns that I have not used. Okay, so let's talk about my health and wellness. Yes, I went to the doctor for routine blood work, and I wound up just being set down a notch or two because my A1C went back up, which means I need to keep on keeping on in the diet and exercise program. But I wanted to lower some of my medicines. I tried it one day with my doctor's permission to do so in a very tiny way, and it didn't work. My sugar shot up. I felt terrible for a day. So I'm back on the same old program of eating as well as my medication. But some of the fatigue, my labs came back. Some of my electrolytes are off a little bit. So he and I are going to talk next week about the results. And I think it's a medication thing from what I can understand. And he and I will have a further conversation about it. But I've been inspired by the Olympics and athletes to take care of myself and to keep expanding on the exercise program. I did use my rowing machine, and I'm like, man, this is getting easier and easier. So I'm going to try to do it more often. My pulse oxygen levels were great, the best that they've been since I've had long COVID diagnosis. So that's good news. We went out on a little ride and went to one of my favorite rock beaches, and I stood on the rock beach, which is an incredible leg workout, and walked quite a bit looking for rocks, breathing the fresh air of the Great Lakes. Lake Huron is where we went. I found fossils, found quite a few shell fossils and coral fossils, and it's just amazing all the different rocks we can find here, because I've been buying polished rocks, but these you don't polish. I just keep them in my plants, the soil, or just in a bowl, because I am a rock hound. It was great to be out, get some fresh air and sunshine, and standing on rocks and walking on a big rock slope made me feel like a mountain goat, and my legs feel that today. So just getting out and being active and walking that's the hardest thing. And he and I have discovered, and through all of this, that it's my back causing some of the problem, as well as, the fatigue is a different part, but some of the pain and all of that, you get all over pain with long COVID, but there's something going on in my back, and I probably heard it doing my bug war, vacuuming and lifting a vacuum to get them off the ceiling and things like that. But it's been an ongoing problem for actually several years. So I'm really working on standing yoga things that help strengthen back and core, gentle exercise. I know doing a lot of rowing might make your back hurt if you use bad technique. So I'm really working on proper technique and short periods of time with that. Much more stretching and walking and movements and what we used to call like calisthenic style physical therapy type exercises, for the back that I found online. So that has been my update. Now, Prime Days. Let's talk about my Amazon Prime Day haul. Well, the first thing I bought was that yarn winder. What an amazing thing. Amazon Prime Days, I've never really gotten into it until this last year or so because I've had a little bit of money. Being an empty nester, I still don't spend lots of money, but starting in about May, we started putting things in our cart to see if they would come up on Prime Day sales. I found some great deals, but what I bought was a lapel mic for YouTube videos and voiceovers. I'm going to tell you that it's so much easier to do that than trying to sync up tracks and stuff. And I'll be honest, I haven't done a lot of YouTube videos because they're hard and they're a lot of work, self-conscious about me being on a video, and I'm like, I really do enjoy making them. So trying to be more creative and doing more YouTube types of videos in this next season, shall we say, of creativity. So I bought a lapel mic for $15 for two. No kidding. They're Bluetooth capable and rechargeable. Fantastic. I bought from a company who makes cosmetics and skincare that are not super expensive, called ELF, ELF, and they have a Holy Hydration series. Now, on Amazon Prime Days, I bought their moisturizer with hyaluronic acid. Anyway, forgive my pronunciation, but they also make an oil or gel that you use, but it's supposed to have a moisturizer with it. It's Holy Hydration, and it really does help with the fine lines and dryness. I have excessively dry skin at this stage of my 50s. As they say, at this age. Oh, I hate that, but it's true. I also bought vitamin B supplement vitamins on Prime Day specials. Who knew? I bought friction pens in many colors, which I like to use those for marking my fabric and doing half skirt triangles as well as other measurements. It's erasable and it disappears with heat. I don't like marking quilts on the front with it at all, but it's great for marking where you're going to cut and sew. And it doesn't blob ink all over and stain white fabric. Oh, ask me how. I know. And I also bought something that I love. Now, do you remember that I took a class this summer on painting with acrylic paints? And I just did lines with a tiny paintbrush. I have decided I hate doing that. Fine line work with a paintbrush. I'd much rather use a pen. That's where I'm experienced at, and it just made me nuts using this tiny little paintbrush to make raindrops. Now, if you've noticed in some of my photos on Instagram, I put above my design board the actual class project. Well, she also gave me another piece to practice on. I painted it black, and I used the Sharpie paint pens this morning, and they are lovely. You can get a bullet point or a brush pen. I got the bullet point, and it's filled with acrylic paint. It's called Sharpie Creative Pens. I'll put a link, and they have a QR code, which I have a picture of also. You can see the practice project I did, making the little raindrops with the pen. It's a little bit thicker line. I had more control. Multiple colors, and it's pressure sensitive, so more paint flows out the more pressure you put on it, like a pen, which leaves it looking like different colors, shades of that color. Love it. I'm gonna I'm loving those. That's going to be a great project for my mixed media as I'm trying to learn how to do that in slow motion learning. And that wraps up my Prime Day sales. And I'll have to say, my friend Kristen over at the Simple Handmade Every Day podcast told me about a YouTuber, and I can't remember the YouTuber's name, but I've watched a few of her videos about how to do manicures at home. She is a nail technician, and she does a lot of manicures with no nail polish. And her big preaching is moisturizing your hands using jojoba oil as a cuticle softener and to help with removing the cuticle. Well, I need moisture, and I used to have jojoba oil when I used to work at a beauty supply shop, and I didn't think about that until I watched the video, and I'm like, I really enjoyed using that nail cuticle oil. And she also is a person that says you should use a little thing of oil or moisturizing every time you wash your hands. And when you're a nurse like me, you wash your hands a lot and use alcohol gels to sanitize your hands, and it's terribly drying. And I'm doing much more moisturizing and self-care. So I'm ordering on Amazon the oil, preaching that. And if I can find the name of that YouTube channel, it's kind of a nice background ASMR thing and chatting about tips on how to have nice nails. Maybe when I do my next manicure, I'm going to polish my nails. I like using the gels with my UV lamp in my manicure set. I may queue up one of her videos while I'm doing it to keep me company. So that is this week's podcast. I really enjoyed talking about all the things I've been up to, feeling very inspired by the Olympics. I can't wait to watch more, and I'm also looking forward to taking some deep dives in research and creativity. So be a lifelong learner. It's always a wonderful thing. I had a big block this one. I'm going to end on this. Is that why am I even making all these? I was kind of embarrassed again by looking at the mountain of craft supplies and quilting supplies I have, and how many physical quilts I have in this house, and all of the handmade projects that I use for decorating my house. And I got thinking, maybe it's just all unsanitary and it's all a waste of time and money. I was just feeling that down of why do I do this, and should I do it anymore, as I'm trying to be much more frugal and I have spent money on other things. And we're preparing for our 2-week vacation on our road trip. So far, so good. We're on track with being able to go. I feel good. And I just got to get tires on my car so we can go. And this has been my why. We need art in this world, and I need to create sometimes to just make sense of it all. And I hope you take time to create this week, to take time for yourself. And if you need to go buy some jojoba oil or holy hydration, go do it. It's not that expensive to spend out, as Gretchen Rubin says in The Happiness Project, that sometimes we need to have these little non-food treats for our self-care. Have a great week and create on, everyone.